Hello everyone, welcome to another YouTube video. Today I thought let's bring the developer in me and try to build something which would allow me to even explore the technology as is, as well as accomplish something in building the outcome. I mean, my goal is to understand that if I have Graph API, if Teams itself works on the context of Graph API, and we use Fluent UI to build the UI for Teams, what if we try to build an app that could actually, I mean, I would not say that I'm going to replicate the entire Teams, but I want to try and see if I can, build the app as how it looks in Teams today, maybe from side rail to all those things, and we'll see how we can, learn in this process. Okay, like think of it this way: the top part of Teams, which is the command bar, the search bar where it sits, the left hand side wherein we have the chat area, and then we have the central area where we load the content. What if we could build something like that? I just want to see. I mean, um, let's try something. I mean, it would be fun, right? So before I start onto that, I think what is required is maybe we have to understand first how are we going to build that. And in order to know that, basically what we are going to do is we are going to look at the Teams Toolkit. Okay, that's one of the amazing toolkit that I have ever seen. I mean, it helps me in streamlining the entire process. I don't have to go about, I mean, think of it this way. When you build a Teams app, what you need a Azure AD app registration. Okay, then you need the registration of your app on the Teams developer portal, right? I mean, these are two most important things. Then once you're done, you need to build an app. The app would require manifest. You would need to test the application, a lot of those things, right? And what I encountered is that Teams Toolkit helps me in focusing myself completely on the code rather than taking care of these things. And today I thought, okay, why shouldn't we look into that? So in order to build this application, what we need is we need Visual Studio Code. That's what I'm going to use. And let's say, for example, you want to start something building on Teams. What you need is something called as Teams Toolkit extension. So you can install it directly from VS Code Marketplace. So I mean extensions marketplace. So you can see I have installed Teams Toolkit. My current version is version 5.0.1. Probably, it keeps on updating and it gives you a whole plethora of services. So let's just quickly explore what Teams Toolkit holds. All right, so in Teams Toolkit, we have got, like, when you are not opening a project which contains Teams Toolkit, it gives you this view. Okay, so basically what it does is it basically gives you something like this, wherein you have, like, think of it this way: you have a buttons for documentations, you have your guides. Okay, then you have two options, for one for creating a new app and another for viewing the samples. So it basically helps you in starting up in a much better way. Okay, so let's do it this way. So let's go to view samples just to see what all sample it contains. So as you can see here, it talks about tab app with Azure backend, contact explorer using graph toolkit, bot app with SSO enabled. Then similar basis, you can see the tags, it says is tab, so it's like a tab app. Okay, the moment it says bot, it's like a bot application. Then similar basis, we have meeting extensions, then Outlook, then SharePoint. Right, your Teams app, the app that you build on Teams Toolkit, can actually run on Teams, Microsoft 365, as well as on Outlook. So think of it this way: when you build an app, it can actually run on all these services, I mean all these clients, right? So here what we're trying to do is we'll just plain start, like, just to give you a brief intro. Let me do this. Let me go ahead, click on create a new app. I want to build a tab app, so it gives me an option of what type of project. I have the option of bot, tab, message extension, and Outlook add-in. So let me go ahead and click on tab. Now here we have basic tab, which is like very minimal. Okay, but then we have React with Fluent UI. I mean, that's the one I want to try, because what it gives me is a web app which essentially uses, it's built using React, and with Fluent UI. It's like a combination of those. So if you have good knowledge on React, you can bring that knowledge over here. If you have knowledge of different UI component, then probably you can start off with basic tab. But here it's like with React with Fluent UI, what it does is it brings the what do you call various other components. So let me just start off with it so that I can help you understand. All right, coming to programming language, I can select JavaScript or I can select TypeScript. For the sake of this, the this recording of video, I don't know who all would be watching, and if you do not know TypeScript, what I do is I would probably select JavaScript so that it makes it easier and makes it much more clearer. So I'm just gonna go ahead, click on browse. Let me just select a folder where I want to deploy this. So I can select my folder. I've created a folder called Teams app. That's where I dump all my apps that I built for Teams. So here I have created a brand new folder, and I'm just gonna select that and just give a, let's say, application name. So I'm just gonna give, I don't want to give hello world because I've got enough hello world applications on my machine. So I'm just gonna give hello Teams, maybe app, I don't know, hello Teams tab app. I don't want to run into an issue with this. So let me just hit enter. And while this is doing, I want to talk about, oh, okay, it has already created. Let me trust all the authors. Yeah. All right, so since it has created, what it did is it opened up a new VS Code window with the folder where it was working. I mean, basically targeted to the new working directory. Now, if you look at this, okay, in order to start off with this, there are some minimum requirements. Okay, so what are those? One is you need to have Node.js installed. If you do not have it, you can install it from nodejs.org/en/download. You can go there based on your platform, you can do it. Or maybe if you're even on the home page, it will automatically detect what version you are in and what it requires. Always try and install the LTS version. Okay, it's long-term support, and basically that would be much better, because the LTS would be supported for maybe another 2-3 years depending on the release cycles and all. So what I do is I have already installed a 64-bit version of LTS for Node, which also includes NPM. NPM stands for Node Package Manager. Okay, for those of you who are not aware of what exactly NPM is, so basically Node is one of the server that runs all the code that I'm writing. Think of it like, let's say if you are running a ASP.NET application, I mean .NET Core based, and it's gonna run on your IS Express or maybe Kestrel, let's say for .NET Core, and there you want to install some packages, right? Some libraries. What we use there is NuGet packages. So here in the world of Node, we have Node Package Manager. So NPM is what contains all the packages. That's where the repositories are. And then apart from this, what you need is like, so I mean, basically once you have Node installed, you need to ensure that your Node is actually what do you call, set up properly, as in it's there in the path. So how do you know whether it's there in the path or not? You can click on terminal and just give node space minus minus version. So since my machine is running on WSL2 as well, so you can see it has got a bash shell. That's what it says over here. And then what you can see is I have a version of Node which says 18.14.2. Let me run the npm version as well so that we know what is the version of my npm. And as you can see, we got the npm version as well. Okay, now what happens is like, at least you should be on 18 and all, because the latest React packages require at least 18. The version of Node is what I'm talking about. Since it has already detected that Node is existing, so it means that it is already having Node installed properly. So let me just quickly check on settings, and then let's see, where is the, I think about, if I go about, I have advanced system settings. That's gonna launch this. I can go to environment variables and I can see here, okay, probably it's there in the path. Let me just see. Ideally it should be there in one of the path. Okay, either, so you can see npm as one of the path, it is there, but that path is a different one. Basically what we have is, I think we have it over here in the system variables, because when I install Node, it would have been installed via what do you call, with Visual Studio as well. So you can see here the in the path it already contains is C program file / node.js. So that's where my node is installed. So it is already aware of where exactly it can find the node binary executables. All right. So apart from this, what you need in order to run this is a demo tenant. Okay. You need to have a demo tenant for you. So what you can do is, I think we already have a link as well, or probably from here as well. I'm just trying to see if I can get you something which is quick enough over here. Okay. So that you can see. Let me, okay, since it's already developer portal and all, so let me just go ahead and click on this. Let me see. So let me just select the Teams Toolkit. Okay, and let me click on Get Started. So here you can see by default, when you click on Get Started, it gives you a couple of things. So one is environment ready. So what you need is Node.js and NPM. We checked, it's already installed. You know what? We created our new app, right? We selected create a new app and we created one. Then you need to have a Microsoft 365 test tenant. Okay, the reason you need this is, think of it this way. When you are building an app for your organization, okay, you're not gonna have anything as what do you call, mm, admin rights. Okay, so basically what happens is, when you are building an app, you might require certain permissions, okay? And those permissions might only be available to you via admin route, right? Think of it this way. When you are trying to access using Graph API, you have got, with Graph API, you can in fact read messages, you can create chats, you can do a whole lot of things specific to an account. And for all those purposes, there are privacy issues, there are all those things. So what happens is, if you want specific permissions which might give access to even a third-party app as well, you need to have admin rights. And that's the whole reason what we do is we always try and ask you to create a test tenant. So in order to do that, you can always go to Microsoft 365 dev program. So if you click on this, basically it will take you to this place wherein you can click on join now and use your Gmail or Outlook, whatever account you want to use, and set up a new developer tenant. So I would recommend not to use this official account. Okay. Official as in this is a Microsoft 365 account. Please do not use that. Use a Gmail or Outlook, something like that. Okay. And then what happens is, once you are done with that, you will be provided with, I shouldn't have closed that. Let me just quickly read through what it provides. Okay, so once you do this, what it will provide you with is a free Microsoft 365 E5. Okay, it's a E5 instant sandbox, which contains 25 user licenses. It's pre-configured for sideloading Teams apps. So basically there are some settings, like one of the setting is allowing the upload of custom app. So that's what it means. It does that for you. Apart from this, what it does is it comes with 16 sample users. Okay, like for example, I'm using this user called Adele Vance. Okay, you can see Adele Vance, Adele V and all. So that is nothing but one of the test users that came for me. Okay, so you get Adele Vance, Alex Wilbur, like that. You have got a lot of users, and you get one admin account which is called as MOD administrator. So it'll be like admin, whatever you gave it. By default, I have given admin. All right. Apart from this, what they do is they give you, pre-provisioned core Microsoft 365 workloads and capabilities. So basically, it comes with some of the licenses, okay, which basically allows you to do a whole lot of app development. Then you get some amount of Power BI. Then you get some of the Power Apps, all those kind of stuff, okay. And by default, this is set for 90 days. Once 90 days gets over, it'll automatically renew for you. Okay. All right. So that's enough. That's like you can access it. You can create your own tenant. What it'll ask you is, once you sign in, okay, like for me, it says already signed in by Adele Vance, one of my demo tenant user. But once you sign in, what will happen is, you can click on join now. You can fill up the form. You can provide your mobile number and all those. It's gonna verify your number via OTP and all those things, but just to ensure that you are a genuine user who is trying to. Okay. Oh, by the way, just FYI, if you are trying to build something which will be sending emails, please ensure that here, since this is a sandbox environment, you won't be able to send out emails outside of your tenant. It's a security so that, by mistake, somebody doesn't go ahead and start spamming user. Okay, just to prevent from that. But yeah, you'll be provided with some random tenant. So it will be like, let's say admin at the rate, maybe for example mine is m365x something something, so you will get something, some random set of characters dot on microsoft.com. Okay, so that will be your tenant, and that's how it's gonna be. All right, so coming to this, so you need to have a dev tenant account. Okay, and then in order to run this, so if you are like on this build in our event Microsoft Build 2023, we announced something called as dev tunnels. I mean Visual Studio dev tunnels. If you were building before this, like version 4x kind of, I mean 4.x of Teams Toolkit, you would have to have something like ngrok, which basically is a tunneling tool. It so think of it this way: your Teams runs not on local but rather on Microsoft.com, right? It's teams.microsoft.com, and for an app to run on Teams, it needs to have certain things. See, an app on Teams is nothing but a web app which is embedded using iframes. Okay, think of it that way, straight and plain and simple. So in order to run an app, what you need is something which is exposed to the outside world. So that URL that you are trying to access needs to be exposed outside. So what we do is we used to do something called as ngrok. We used to expose the port and then use that particular URL to run here. Okay, so here what happens is, I mean, local still it works because it is still running on your local context. So still it works out. But let's say, for example, even if you need sometimes, the Teams Toolkit will automatically provision something called as dev tunnels for you. So it will create a temporary tunnel which would actually expose your local app to the outside world, which can be accessed by Teams. Okay, so all right, so now what I want to do is, the first step is, I mean, let's just look at the breakthrough of this. So we have got Teams Toolkit, since it has already detected that it's a Teams app. Okay, so it has got features like accounts, wherein you can sign into a Microsoft 365 account. This is where I will sign in with my Adele Vance account, because I don't want to sign in with an admin account. Reason is, as a developer of an organization, when I try to build an app, I might not have all the permissions and I would have to request the admin to grant me certain rights. Okay, and that's the whole reason I don't want to do that. Now here what happens is, I can click on sign into Microsoft 365. You can see sign in, and right, let me allow access to the firewall. Now it has already opened up because I have been working on this particular window, and so it opens with the Adele Vance account. If by any chance you think that it has opened up in a different browser window, just make sure that you go to the account wherein the browser is opened and open a new tab, so that Edge automatically takes it for you, whatever browser you select. So here I'm just gonna select it, and it says it's signed in now. I can close this page. So let me just jump back. You can see it says side loading enabled. Okay, it detected side loading is enabled. If in case for you it is not enabled, you need to sign in with your admin account, and I'll show where it is. Again, I think, let me just quickly run through my admin account as well. Okay, right, let me see. Okay, so I click on sign in. No, sign into this app only. All right, so I've signed in using my admin account. Let me see. Let me open teams.microsoft.com. So I'm going to the Teams admin account. You have to ensure that when you are on this page, okay, you set up certain things. By default, I think when you create a new tenant nowadays, it comes with pre-enabled configuration for the global users. Let me see while this is signing in. All right, while this signs in, let's just jump back to VS Code just to ensure that we are doing everything. All right, so after this we have sign into Azure. I'm not going to sign into Azure right now. So, but this is there so that Teams Toolkit can, provision all the required resources. I mean, when you click on sign into Azure, it asks you to select your subscription. Then it's gonna ask you to select the resource. I mean, sorry, the resource group and all those region and whatnot. And once it is done, it actually signs in and keeps that specific settings in check. After that, we have got environment like local and dev. Local is something that runs on your local host. Dev is something that once you provision some resources and deploy to Azure, it runs on a developer portal basis. Okay. So once you do the dev part, that's basically something that you can use to test it with your colleagues or your friends. I mean, basically, but I mean, sorry, I should not call it friends because that's something within an organization, and I would rather call it colleagues or peers or whoever, even if you have friends in offices. I mean, but you can share it internally for testing purposes. All right, so that's the environment segment. After that, we have the development segment wherein, we created a new app, right? We click on it. I mean, even if you click on this, it's gonna come up with a new project option. I am gonna press escape so that I don't have to do that. Similar basis, you have view samples, how to guides, and preview your Teams app. Hey, if you have been a developer, pressing F5 works. So here also is the same thing. Just press F5 and it's gonna go ahead and launch the debug for your application. I mean, debug, preview, whatever you wanna call it. After that, once you have developed your application locally and you want to test it out, so we have the lifecycle segment wherein what we have is something called as provision. When you click on provision, what it does is, see, in order to run your application on Teams, it tries to deploy these things on Azure. Now, in order to deploy, it has to provision certain resources. Like, let's say it could be deploying your application on Azure storage. Okay, that's where it's gonna deploy, set up the blob, set up all those things, and then it's gonna even do some things like maybe setting up the resource. It's gonna do things like, I think it has user assigned managed identity, all those kind of stuff. It provisions everything for you. I mean, you have all these settings available in your hand. You can have a look at it. And then once all of those things are done, you can click on the deploy part, which basically executes the deploy lifecycle, right? In Teams app.map. And then we have the publish part. So you can publish this basically once your app is deployed to Azure. Apart from this, we have the utility like zip Teams app package. So we have got manifest. See, the thing is, a manifest is something that if you have been an Android developer, maybe something when you are building an app for browser extensions, for Teams, PWAs, anywhere, we have got manifest that contains a whole lot of stuff. Here the manifest contains much more than that. Okay, that defines here in Teams app, the context of Teams app, your manifest defines a whole lot of stuff from who you are, where the app is, what website it is, what all domains are valid, what type of app you have built. I mean, it's everything is contained within the manifest, even from the SSO aspect and all. Okay, then we have validate application, open developer portal, and then other stuff. Okay, let me just let me just quickly refresh once more. Why did I run into an error? Okay, so I think something's wrong. Oh, okay, it's loading now. Cool. So you can see this is a dashboard of Teams admin. So anybody who is an admin would see it like that. So what happens is by default when we create, so here I have customized my tenant, okay, based on some of this stuff. But by default, what happens is you come here into Teams apps on the left side menu, and here we have got something called as setup policies. So in this setup policies is something that we define in terms of what we are going to do or how we are going to handle it. So by default, nowadays, when you create a dev tenant, you can go to your global org wide default. And what you'll notice is upload custom apps is turned on. Okay. So when you turn it on, it basically allows you to sideload the app. So you can see this is also known as sideloading. This setting determines if a user can upload a custom app package in the Teams app. Turning it on lets you create or develop a custom app to be used personally or across your organization without having to submit it to the Teams app store. Uploading a custom app also lets you test an app before you distribute it more widely by only assigning it to a single user or group of users. Okay, so basically, if you look at it, so mine is turned off. I have turned it off because what I did is I created a duplicate policy of the global and I created it as this app developers. Okay, and what I did is I assigned, so I have turned it on over here. And what I did is I selected app developers and I went to manage user, assign users, and I added a couple of users. Like for example, if I go to Adele Vance, so you can see it already has app developers policy assigned. I mean the setup policy. The reason is what I did is by default in an org, what happens is not everybody will have the side loading enabled. Your admin might give you that, and that's the whole reason I tried it on my own. And I wanted like, okay, I have a custom set of policies, and that's what it is for me. So you just have to ensure that if you're starting by default, the upload custom apps is turned on for you. Okay, so mine, since mine is already enabled via the app developer policy, so I don't need to turn it on. And how I know that it's turned on is because you will notice this green check which says side loading enabled. This means that for you the side loading is enabled, the permission is there. All right, so how does Teams know that, okay, this, I mean, Teams Toolkit extension knows that it's Teams app? Let's look at the code base over here. In this code base, you can see there are a couple of stuff. It's the standard boilerplate structure that gets created. So we have got .vs code, which basically contains the, a couple of settings. If I need to deep dive, it has got like something like launch.json. So I mean, okay, so I know you would ask, okay, what is this launch and all? Okay, let me just click on either. So if you want to start your app, you can click on preview your Teams app, F5, okay, which says shortcut is F5. You can click on this. If I click, it's gonna ask me, it will give me a bunch of options, which is debug in Teams, Edge, Chrome, launch remote in Teams, Edge or Chrome, then debug in Outlook. Then similar basis, you have Microsoft 365 app, right? These configurations have been defined. If I click on this on the top right, you will see this button, even that will do the same thing. Or if I press F5 on my keyboard, okay, it's gonna just immediately start. Okay, so what is it doing? What exactly is this guy doing? It has basically provided me with an option and it tried to run it. Okay, so how does it know what it needs to do? So let's look at this. So here we have got package.json. This is the main application, I mean the JSON file. For any node application, what happens is, you're provided with a package.json file which contains all the repository that you need. I mean all the dependencies. So here you can see I'm installing a Fluent UI component, which is React components. Then apart from that, we have got some packages from Microsoft, which is one of them is MGT React, MGT Teams FX provider. So these are nothing but Teams framework provider and for React components. Then we have got Graph client, okay, and then after that we have got Teams JS and let's say Teams FX, Teams React. So if I have to say, okay, so here, I mean, basically all I have is a couple of these packages which determines how my application is going to come. So on these, basically, if you see, these are nothing but common packages. Okay, so if you have been building application for any of the other like React application or anything, you'll notice that you have got all of these things. Okay, so if I have to say, Axios is used for fetching the API calls like fetch and all, maybe post, get, request. Then you have React DOM, React Router DOM. These are nothing but packages for React applications. Even React scripts is something for that. So what we have is some of these parts which are used like for Teams framework and all, which is basically allowing you to do SSO and other stuff. Okay. All right, so here what I did is, since I had pressed F5, so it launched. So I will explain it, just give me a moment. So basically this window, the first time when you start, what will happen is, Teams will not allow you to run your application without HTTPS. So here what happens is you are creating a local host. Since it is a local host server, so you are doing self-signed certificate. As you can see here, it says it is a self-signed certificate. So it basically asks you to trust this self-signed certificate, and that's the whole reason you get this message. It says for Teams to trust the self-signed SSL certificate used by Toolkit, a self-signed certificate must be added to your certificate store. Okay, you may skip this step, but you will have to manually trust the secure connection in a new browser window when debugging your apps in Teams. I don't want to do that. I don't want to miss that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click on install. And what it's going to do is it's going to prompt me saying that you can see, hey, this is the certificate authority. You're trying to install a certificate from a certificate authority which is claiming to represent localhost. Since it cannot validate localhost, it's just asking me to confirm. I'm just gonna click on yes. Okay, so it has installed the localhost for me. Now here, when I was presented with a couple of those options, all of those were present here. You can see launch remote in Teams, launch remote in Chrome, launch remote in Outlook, launch remote in Outlook Chrome. Likewise, I mean, I've got a couple of more options over here for me. So these are some of the things that you saw, right? But if you look at this, these are the compounds which basically comes for you. So you can see debug in Teams Edge, debug in Teams Chrome. Likewise, so this is one by one in the same order is what I was presented, right? And you can see we have got a couple of groups defined, like group one was Teams. Okay, likewise we had group two, so it was already divided in various segments, and that's how it was done for you. And what it does is it basically says, okay, so when I say configuration, it is what attached to front end in Teams Edge, and then we have a pre-launch task called start Teams app locally. So attached to front end, let me just select this, and you will be able to, when you scroll up, you will see, okay, so this is where it launches, right? It launches this particular URL. But before that, what we have is in the launch, it says pre-launch task is start Teams app locally. So if I select tasks.json, here you have something called start Teams app locally. What it does is it depends on these things, which is validate prerequisites, provision, deploy, and start application. Depends order is sequence. So let me just select validate prerequisites. In the validate prerequisites, it checks for your Node.js, M365 account, as well as the port occupancy. The port occupancy is nothing but 53,000 as the port for tab. Okay, so that's what it is doing. Apart from that, it is trying to see provision part. Provision is like if you are doing local environment, so that's what it is using, environment as local. And you can see by default it would have created and populated everything over here. This is the environment. It has used this environment, it has created a port, it has given me an endpoint, it has created an app ID. So when you see app ID, that means that the app is registered in Teams developer account. Likewise, we have AAD. So this means that this is all for Azure Active Directory app configuration. So you can see client ID, object ID, tenant ID, authority host. Basically, the authority becomes nothing but login.microsoftonline.com/tenant ID. Okay. Okay, so I think it's already started. Okay, let me just quickly give the password over here. Okay, let it go. While this is loading, I'm still going through this. So, and then these are a couple of things. Apart from this, you can see here we accepted a certificate, right? So this is the certificate file and the key to it. Then Teams app tenant ID. See, this is the same tenant ID which was given here, as well as it has been defined as part of the login.microsoftonline.com/tenant ID. Then we have title ID, M365 app ID, a whole bunch of other settings that is required. So here we saw we have .vs code. Then we have app package folder. Here it contains the manifest. You can see this is a template manifest. It has got dollar curly braces twice, and then let's say whatever the value that has been, like for example tab underscore endpoint, and then curly braces curly braces. Likewise Teams fx underscore env. So you can see here tab underscore endpoint is something that is picked up from here, right? So it replaces, it creates a new environment, I mean variable for you. So if you look at your build, this is where we get the final manifest, and you can see it has already merged the data for you. So this build, I mean app package basically contains the manifest, the template manifest for you. All right, then we have the, like I said, we have the build part. So build already contains, there's a different part, there's the AAD manifest. Okay, so once you build an application, when you register the Azure app registration, this is the manifest that comes through with it. I mean, we try to modify everything on the what do you call, on the portal. So if I have to, let me just go quickly to, let me just refresh this. So the app name is Hello Teams tab app. So I should see Hello Teams tab app. You can see. All right. So how do I know this is the app ID? Starting with BDDAC, ending with C68. So if I select this BDDAC C68, so this is the manifest, right? And if I look at the app package, sorry, the environment as well, you can see this is the app client ID and all, right? So this is the some of the settings that it picks up for you. Okay, all right. So now what I will do is I just wanted to show you the portal. So in the portal we have got a whole bunch of settings. Okay, you can see it already has localhost 53,000 for you. I did not create this. This was created by Teams Toolkit. Apart from this, even my developer portal is already registered with the same application. So if I scroll down, hello world, hello Teams tab app, right? So okay, so if I come here, you can see, how do I know that this is the one? So let's see, let me go to basic information, and you can see here this is the client ID, right? So basically what I do is, if you see, this is the BDDAC 0236F8A ending with C68. So that's the same one, that's the same application, right? So this is the client ID. So basically what it did is, I didn't go and create this. This was all created by Teams Toolkit. So if I see the output window, you can see it did a whole bunch of processes for me. Here, see, it did the prerequisites, it did checking for Node.js, Microsoft 365 account, ports occupancy. After all of those were confirmed, it went ahead and following actions were done. So it did create an Azure Active Directory app to authenticate user. It created a Teams app. It ran a couple of scripts. Then it validated Teams app, zip app package. All of these things were done for you. And then it went ahead, updated everything. See, if it didn't have the environment app variable, it created the app because of this, because it didn't have all of those settings done. Okay, so it did all of these for you. It executed a whole bunch of scripts, ensured that you don't have to go, and you have a smoother process. You just click on it and it starts. Okay, now here, since it has already done everything for me, you can see the summary is it did everything. I mean, you can read through this. Okay, so now that this is done, okay, so this is the part and my application has started. You can see it went into Teams. Here it came as a tab app, hello Teams tab app. You can see it has given me like whatever was entered, full description of hello Teams tab app. All of these has come from manifest, okay, even from name and everything. Let me just click on add, and it's going to install the application on my Teams. Okay, while that is being done, let me just finish this quickly. Now here in the infra part, we have the Azure Bicep. It basically contains the structure on what all things needs to be created. For example, see, you can see it has to create a resource of type storage account. Kind is storage v2, and then where it needs to deploy, the Azure storage resource ID, the tab domain, the endpoint, all of these would be fetched from that. These are the parameters that needs to be provided. Okay, so all of these will be taken care of. Node underscore modules is nothing but a directory where all your node packages are installed. So you can see it's filled with enough packages. Okay, all right, then we have a public folder. So by default, the entry point of this starts with index.html. That basically contains the what do you call, the Office UI Fabric core. I mean, this is the CSS, but it basically loads the React application from here. So what if you look at this, let me just open the, I think, package.json in here. No, not here, sorry. I think it was here. No, not this, is the different one. Okay, so you can see here, right? This is the endpoint. It says index.html hash tab. So that's what. So basically, when you run a React application automatically attaches itself. I mean, it runs on the context of index.html. I mean, so basically React works on the basis of a virtual DOM. Okay, so it needs one element where it can attach itself. And what we do is we basically say is we create an index.html. Okay, and this is the place where it needs to attach, which is div id equals root. So this is where my entire application is going to run. So it's an empty element. Okay, since body contains nothing but no script and div, no script will not get rendered if my JavaScript is enabled. So I have got div id root by default, And here, if I look at my code base, so you can see index.jsx is my entry, but here, which is the container, it says document.getElementById by id is root. And that's where it is trying to create and render an app component. Okay, so it enters the React part. I mean, that's where we also enter. We have got a couple of more files like auth start.html and auth-end that basically determines, I mean, how it has to, perform a SSO, and once the SSO is done, when the return comes back, so how it needs to handle that. So here, this is where my entire source is stored, the src folder. Okay, in the src folder, we have got index.css, index.jsx. We looked at index.jsx. Then we have app. So where does app come from? App comes from /component/app. So / is nothing but same folder. We have got components folder, and then inside it we have app.jsx. So remember, since I did everything with JavaScript, that was my setting initially, and that's the whole reason it came through this. If I would have created it using TypeScript, you would have seen the extension as app.tsx. Okay, all of these files would be tsx files. All right, so let's look at this. This is the app that got created. It says congratulations, Adele Vance. So it means that it was able to do SSO. It got the name, it figured out the profile, right? And it got a complete set of demo code. So if I have to, so since we went to app.jsx, now here in the app.jsx, there are a bunch of code. Like for example, it is handling from Teams framework context. It got theme string, Teams user credential, whether my theme is set to dark or contrast, whatever theme is set. Now here, what happens is I'm going to hashtag tab. Okay, so you can see my manifest, it says /tab. So what it does is when it comes to app.jsx, it goes to tab. Now when it goes to /tab, it loads the tab component, which is again defined here. So tab is from /tab, means same folder, tab.jsx. So when I come here now, you can see it is using the theme string to read whether it's a default or light or dark, what it needs to set up, and then it's loading another component called welcome. So I can actually press F12 as well, and I'm going to land up on that particular file, or you can read from the top. Now when I come here, okay, I'm not explaining the entire React part. Okay, if you need to know React, probably I would suggest to go through some other videos to understand how React works and what it contains. But here in the welcome.jsx, it has got a bunch of import statements. So import is something that allows me to fetch either the components or maybe some libraries or some sort of functionalities that I need from different libraries or from different exported files. So that's what we are doing here. We have created a function called welcome, which has got props. Props are nothing but properties. So if I need to pass on something from my parent component to my child component, what I do is I make use of props. So here you can see I'm doing something called like props, and it is reading from ... props. That's a spread operator. Okay, that basically allows me to add certain things. So here you can see I've given const, show function, and environment. So these are nothing but variables that gets defined, and show function is set to true. Environment, based on what is the value it's returning based on the location.host, it means what is the domain. If it has domain as localhost, it's gonna return back saying local, or else gonna return back saying Azure. So where does that come from? You can see I've given welcome, and show function is nothing but a simple prop. So since this is the parent component is tab is calling in a child component called welcome, and in welcome I'm passing in a prop called show function. So you can see here I have got a show function. Okay, so I get this. Now similar basis, you can see like environment, I know I'm running on localhost, right? So the value should be local. So let's look at it. You can see, yes, your app is running in your local environment, right? So it picked up if friendly environment name, if it is local, based on the environment value, it returns local environment, or else the default value is local environment. Apart from this, what we are doing is we are using, since the app is running within the context of Teams, we make use of Teams framework, and we fetch the user credential. I mean, user credential ideally contains some of the stuff, like it's not going to be username and password. Okay, let's be clear about it. it basically contains the token which is passed on by Teams. So depending on your application, Teams passes the token to you, so you can use that within your application, and then you can use it to fetch your user info. You can get the username, and that's how we got it. So you can see congratulations if username question mark. So if username is not undefined, it goes ahead and prints the username, and that's the reason you have got Adele Vance as the value. Right, so here we got a bunch of code, but all it does is it basically runs these. So what I wanted to show you is, so I've got, let me do this. I'm just gonna do hi, then again gonna give comma and just hit save. Okay, Control S, and you should see that the value got updated here. I did not do a restart unless until you are making change to a manifest, or sometimes you have got complex components and all which needs to read value from environment or something which is like loading something. You should be good enough in terms of just saving the file and restarting, or else if it didn't reflect, maybe try giving a refresh, I mean a reload tab over here, and click on it, and it should ideally load it. Now, how do I know that this is a web app? Like, you can click on this button, which basically launches the website. So you can see here, it is running. It can give you can see localhost colon 53,000, right? Pardon the error. Basically, it says SDK initialization timed out. Naturally, it has to, because it's not running within Teams. But you can see here, that's the whole reason I knew it is /tab. I mean, I knew it from the manifest, but even from the URL, you can know. So think of it this way. If you were storing it on Azure, I mean, if it's deployed, the URL would be something like maybe something.storage.azurewebsites.net. Okay, so some different URL would be there. So your application runs within the context of Teams, and that's the whole reason you have a bunch of these things set up for you. And then you have other code as well. So all right, so this is, oh yeah, other two things that are there is something like teamsapp.yml, or maybe teamsapp.local.yml. This is the way of providing values for the resources. You might have seen some files like this for if you're doing something like, I mean, YAML files. These are like YAML languages. So these are used by Docker. These are used by even GitHub Actions, or any other places where you are doing some sort of CI/CD, something like. So you give the build environment like that. So here I've given provision. It uses AAD app/create with, let's say, name, generate client secret as value is true, sign in audience is Azure AD myarg, which basically means single tenant. Then write to environment file. What do I need to write? I need to write client ID, client secret. All of these are being written, right? So depending on what it does, it has got all of these variables and values. So if you want, you can change these values if you're doing some complex stuff, but I would suggest stick to it and test out your application through that. Okay, so this is about the application that is running within the context of Teams. And if I have to say, that was just a run through in terms of what Teams Toolkit does. Okay, I would suggest, if you want to run through, I mean, create a simple application on Teams, try to run it, modify here and there, hi, hello, like that, and see whether those things are, sorry, I didn't save, sorry, Control S, and see whether your data is getting updated or not, all of these. Okay, so this is the, I'm not going to say it's basics of Teams Toolkit, but rather a quick, or maybe a start of what Teams Toolkit is and how you start off with it. Okay, so my take is pretty simple. What I wanted to do was, I wanted to start with exploring of Teams Toolkit, and then going forward with things like using Fluent UI for building UI, exploring Graph API, and then implementing Azure functions and whatnot. I mean, like I said, right, I want to do a complete developer journey and take this application, let's say, from first hand, I mean, build, instead of Hello Teams tab app, I wanted to, what do you call, let's say if I have Teams running within this. So, I don't have Teams. Oh yeah, this is Teams, right? So I wanted to see if I can build a similar UI. So this UI would be something which is inside this, right? I mean, the left side rail, maybe I click on chat. I'm just gonna keep it like this if I can. Maybe I'll remove the side rail and just keep the chat part. Okay, and then this is the window. Then you have got a couple of more like search bar, the icon, and all those. I'm just gonna see. That's the good, fun part. I mean, basically you're learning as well to see what is possible and whatnot. But yeah, I want to give it a try. So all I can say is go through the video. Feel free to drop comments, subscribe, and let me know how it goes. If you have any questions, just drop a comment. Maybe tag me. I'll make sure that I will try my best to respond back to you. And if you have some feedback, I would be very much open because I have newly started this. It would really be helpful. If you have something specific, like you are trying to achieve something, some type of scenario, feel free to post that as well. I would love to give that a try, or maybe make a video on top of it, which would help you, and hey, it'll help others as well, and I'll also be able to learn more. All right. Thank you so much. Let's meet you in the next video, which will be basically exploring the Fluent UI and try to change something on the UI part of it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.